Thank you for your interest in the National Association of Language Advisors Grammar Resources. Grammar in the National Curriculum, from Key Stage 1 and Key Stage 2 to GCSE and A-Level. Back in 2008, Ofsted identified the need for higher standards of literacy in English, and it felt that there should be a greater input of grammar into the English curriculum in the primary school. So, with that in mind, when the new curriculum was introduced in 2014, there was a strong emphasis on grammar, punctuation, and spelling. And that means that all pupils leaving primary school these days have been learning the grammar from the new curriculum for 6 years. It is formalised by a series of SATs papers. In Key Stage 1, it is an optional SAT, although most schools do it, but the results are not published. In Key Stage 2, there is also a grammar, punctuation and spelling test. This is statutory, and the results are published. The inclusion of grammar in the curriculum has raised a number of issues, particularly as most teachers have not learnt about English grammar themselves when they were pupils in school. So they've had to learn the terminology that's included in the tests and in the curriculum. A lot of teachers say that their knowledge of grammar comes from when they themselves learnt French or German or Spanish in school. The following slides show a few samples from a Key Stage 2 grammar paper, and it will give you a good idea of some of the terminology used. So here it's important to understand what a prefix is, as they're asked to match the prefix to the correct word. Here they're asked to say what a noun phrase is, and they need to do that to be able to complete the exercise. Here they need to know what a relative clause is in order to complete the exercise. And here they're asked to say where my father works, is that a preposition phrase, a relative clause, a main clause, or a noun phrase? Here, knowledge of different kinds of tenses are required. So here they have to identify which sentence uses the past progressive. And here, at question 41, they're required to know what the subjunctive form is in order to complete the question. Here, what is the word class underlined in the sentence below? So they would need to understand what an adjective is, an adverb, a determiner, and a noun. And the next question is about punctuation. So which one is punctuated correctly? Here, which sentence is an exclamation sentence? And exclamation sentences a few years ago were a big part of the teaching of Year 2, and pupils were required to understand what an exclamation sentence was. Here, complete the sentence with an appropriate subordinating conjunction. So as you can see, there is a lot of terminology that pupils need to be able to understand and learn. Here, we take a grammatical overview of the terminology used in the primary English curriculum from Year 1 to Year 6. In Year 1, pupils are introduced to these terms: letter, capital letter, word, singular, plural, sentence, punctuation, full stop, question mark, exclamation mark, and sequencing sentences. The focus very much is on how to construct a meaningful sentence which is correctly punctuated. In Year 2, there is an awful lot to learn and get through. It is probably one of the heaviest in terms of content. And as you can see from the list here, there's an awful lot in it. So noun, noun phrase, statement, question, exclamation, command, compound, adjective, verb, suffix, adverb, comma, subordination and coordination, as well as a knowledge of different tenses and use of the apostrophe in contractions and also for singular possession. So there's a huge amount of content there. It is assumed that on completing Year 2, the end of Key Stage 1, that pupils have mastered all the content from Year 1 and Year 2. and that is working fine. And now they can move on to year 3 and add in these additional features. So an understanding of what an adverb is, preposition, conjunction, word family, prefix, clause, subordinate clause, direct speech, consonant letter, and a vowel letter. So they're introduced to using inverted commas or speech marks. They can use paragraphs, headings, subheadings, and different forms of verbs. So again, a lot of content. As they move into year 4, the year 3 content hopefully has been consolidated, and they can be introduced to understanding the use of determiners, pronouns, possessive pronouns, adverbials, noun phrases, and this time by use of a modifying adjective, and fronted adverbials. That is perhaps one of the things that's hit national headlines. What is a fronted adverbial? Use of paragraphs, appropriate choice of pronoun or noun, and apostrophes now to mark plural possession. As pupils move into year 5, they're introduced to the relative clause, the modal verb, use of relative pronoun, different kinds of punctuation, and cohesion, and how to build that within a paragraph, and how to link ideas across paragraph using adverbials. So again, this time it's more about the application of those grammatical terms. So it's not just enough to know them, but how you might use them in your writing. So once again, it is assumed that what they learnt in years 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 5 is now consolidated, and they can move on now to more things like use of active and passive voice, subject and object, different kinds of punctuation and word use, and also the difference between formal and informal structures of speech, the use of subjunctive forms, and a wider range of cohesive devices. So this presents quite a lot of grammatical knowledge built up over 6 years. For each subject in the primary national curriculum, including English and primary languages, we read this statement. By the end of each key stage, pupils are expected to know, apply, and understand the matter, skills, and processes specified in the relevant programme of study. This should be familiar to us from Bloom's taxonomy. It's not just about knowledge, but it's also about understanding and application. So, for instance, if we take this story, children, what do we use an apostrophe for? A hand goes up. We use an apostrophe to show that a letter's missing. We call it a contraction. That's exactly right, says the teacher. What else do we use an apostrophe for? Well, another hand goes up. It's used to show something belongs to somebody. It's called possession. That's exactly right. In fact, most adults could give you that definition. But do they then go on to use an apostrophe correctly? I think not. Because what they have is the knowledge, but they have yet to show the understanding and apply it correctly. So this is what we want from grammar. We do want them to know the terminology, and that's what's tested in the SATS grammar test. But you also need them to understand it, apply it, analyze it, and hopefully be creative with it in their writing. So this application of grammatical understanding is also included in the primary curriculum, and it comes into the teacher assessment of writing, which takes place at the end of year 2, the end of Key Stage 1, and the end of year 6, end of Key Stage 2. It is a statutory requirement. So here are those requirements for the end of Key Stage 1, the end of year 2. And you can see it contains a lot of grammatical features in order to reach the expected standard. So we need simple coherent narratives, capital letters and full stops, question marks, tense, coordination, and subordination. What's meant by simple coherent narrative? Well, coherence means that the writing is logical, that it uses the appropriate tense, that coordinating and subordinating conjunctions are used appropriately. It contains expanded noun phrases, and there are different sentence types used in the writing, such as statements, questions, commands, or explanations. So there's an awful lot in there, so children need to be able to evidence that in what they write. A few children at the end of Key Stage 1 will also be working at the greater depth standard. So in addition to the things listed for the expected standard, they're also able to write effectively or coherently for different purposes and use their reading to inform their vocabulary and grammar. They're able to use the punctuation taught at Key Stage 1 and add suffixes. This isn't easy, and it is required, though, that they're able to demonstrate their understanding of grammar and apply it in different contexts to bring clarity and awareness of audience and so on. So there's a lot involved. And as I say, it isn't easy, but school after school, there are children reaching that expected standard and some children working at this greater depth standard. They're able to show their understanding of grammar in a context. At the end of Key Stage 2, at the end of Year 6, in other words for our 10 and 11-year-olds, this is the expected standard, that pupils can write effectively for a range of purposes and audiences. They can integrate dialogue. They can select vocabulary and grammatical structures that reflect what the writing requires. For instance, using contracted forms in dialogues and passive verbs, using modal verbs and so on. They can build cohesion using conjunctions, adverbials of time, pronouns, etc. They can use their tenses correctly and a range of punctuation taught at Key Stage 2. So there is a lot in there. And what's meant by writing effectively is the way they use their adverbials, their pronouns, their determiners, and their conjunctions and their subordinate clauses, etc. So it's the way they apply that grammar in a meaningful context. So for a few children, they'll be working at the greater depth standard. So they'll be able to do all that's required from the expected standard. And in addition, to be able to write effectively for a range of purposes and audience, selecting the appropriate form, distinguishing between the language of speech and writing, and exercising an assured and conscious control of levels of formality, particularly through manipulating grammar and vocabulary. So again, there's a huge requirement here to write meaningfully and with purpose using appropriate structures from grammar. And again, I would say in school after school, there are children who are reaching these standards. And I would argue that there has been a considerable rise in standards of written English in recent years and a better understanding by pupils of what grammar is all about and what it can be used for. So, if in English, grammatical understanding has been taught for 6 years in primary school, we can't really ignore this if we're going to move on from it. We should use this knowledge base, particularly the terminology learned when learning other languages. That might be secondary English, so we should continue to build on what they've already learned, or also if they're learning a French or German or Spanish or indeed any other language. The primary languages curriculum at Key Stage 2 picks up on this. So they're required to understand basic grammar, appropriate to the language being studied, so it brings in feminine and masculine or neuter if needs be, how verbs are used, the patterns of the language, how to apply these to build sentences, and how these differ from or are similar to English. So we are required to make those links with English. This then carries through to Key Stage 3. So again, the ability to identify and use tenses and other structures, use and manipulate a variety of key grammatical structures, and develop a wide-ranging and deepening vocabulary, and use accurate grammar and spelling and punctuation. These are all things they are very, very familiar with from their learning of English in the primary school. So for modern language teachers, therefore, there are a number of interesting questions. Is the grammar being learnt in English just for the sake of tests? and grammar exercises? Well, the answer surely is no. It is grammar, yes, a test is there, but it's also used in a context, and that's what hopefully they've been learning how to do, how to use grammar for effect. Okay, so therefore, how do we use grammar to deepen understanding? How are we going to do that? And surely we should build on the knowledge they already have. With this in mind, NALA has developed a bank of resources which can be used to make links between the grammar in the primary curriculum for English and French grammar, German grammar, and Spanish grammar. So it's a quick reference guide so that teachers, pupils, teaching assistants, teachers doing training, and pupils themselves can also reference and refer to what has been learnt in English. It is firmly rooted in the primary curriculum. It does not cover everything, but it does make those links. So it doesn't cover everything, but it puts them in a context of what's already been learnt. In each section of the resources, you will find 4 different languages covered: English, French, German, and Spanish. And you're encouraged to explore the resources for yourself and become familiar with them. They're divided into 2 main sections, lexical and functional. In the lexical section, you will see that nouns, adjectives, and adverbs are covered, and then verbs with all these different sections. In the functional section, you'll find there are 15 different aspects covered. So we have conjunctions, determiners, prepositions, possession, sentences, negative, relative clause, questions and exclamations, punctuation, direct and indirect speech, word use, formal and informal language, homophones, paragraphs, and cohesion. You are required to take note of the terms of use, and these resources may be shared within your school or educational establishment, but nowhere else, please. And it is required that you do not remove the NALA logo or copy the materials or claim them as an original work. There may well be errors in it, and we will make every effort to update things as we move through. And you're asked to email communications@NALA with any comments or questions you may have. Currently, the resources are being piloted in primary, secondary, and ITT settings. The resources are available as a free download from the NALA website. When you enter the website, you'll be required to register, providing the name of your education establishment, an email, and agreeing to abide by the terms and conditions. The resources are available as interactive PDF formats. Here is an example of the noun. So you get an introductory slide of noun, and then you get a dashboard. So here's the dashboard for noun. And as you can see from the dashboard, there are several categories: noun, plural noun, pronoun, compound noun, noun phrase, word family, synonym and antonym, and word class. So if I click on noun phrase, that will take me to the English slide, which gives me the details of what's on a noun phrase. If I click on the return arrow, it will take me back to the dashboard. I can then choose another word to look at, so word class, and that will take me to the page that tells me about that. So if I go back to noun phrase, we click on that, that will take us to the English noun phrase page. I then have the option of choosing a link with a different language. So I can choose the French flag, the German flag, or the Spanish flag. The French will obviously take me to the French page, the German to the German page, and the Spanish flag to the Spanish phrase, where it will tell me what a noun phrase is in that language. If I click on the return arrow, it will take me back to the dashboard. What each one of these does is always take you to the English page. so that you make the links with the English part of the curriculum. So here is another example showing adverbs. So we have the title page for adverbs. I click on the next slide and it gives us the dashboard for adverb, which covers all these different things: adverbial phrase, adverbial clause, adverb of time, adverb of manner, adverb of place, adverb of reason, a fronted adverbial, and a position of adverbs. So if I click on fronted adverbial, it will take me to the English page, which explains how a fronted adverbial might work. I can then choose whether I want to link that with French, or with German, or with Spanish. And I can click on the return arrow to take me back to the dashboard. Here is a further example. This time it's from the functional aspects, and this is determiners. So I have the headline slide and then followed by the dashboard. And again, determiners covers all these different aspects. I can choose articles, click on that, and it will tell me what articles are in English. And then I have the option of choosing the French page, the German page, or the Spanish page, or all three if I wish. That will make links to articles in French, articles in German, and articles in Spanish. And they tend to be more complicated because we have masculine and feminine, we have neuter also with German, and so on. So it takes you to that, and again I can click on the return arrow and return to the dashboard. Thank you for your interest in the grammar resources. We hope you find them useful. Feedback is welcome, so please inform us of any errors encountered, or if you have any questions or comments, please do contact us. Thank you very much.